Hello Swirly Savages. Today I'm going to share the anatomy of a layout with you using the September kit, and I'm going to be using these two pieces of Bo Bunny paper. So I'm going to start with the red as the background, and I'm going to be cutting the pattern paper at an angle, as you can see here, flipping over that pattern paper and using the back side as well at another angle. Now I'm using some gray cardstock here, and I'm just doing a 1-inch frame around the outside. I'm going to use that outside frame only as the background for my paper, and then I'm just using the inner pieces to cut a couple of doilies out, as you can see here, and then I'm going to cut those in half and just kind of tuck those into the layers of my pattern paper. And then I'm adding some flowers from the kit and making some banners. Now, as you can remember, those are kind of one of the things I like to do. So adding some banners and tucking those in. And I've done some die cuts as well with some vines, and that's just using some green cardstock. And now using another piece of that gray cardstock, I'm using about a 3 by 3 square, and I'm cutting a frame out as well. And I'm going to use that to frame one of the pictures later on. Okay, so there's what I was talking about there. It's about a 3 by 3 or 3.5 by 3, one of the two. I didn't exactly measure that. And then I started making a couple of handmade flowers here with some of the pattern paper, just using a flower punch that I had on hand and kind of roughing up the flowers a little bit, kind of just crumbling in my hand and then inking those up so you can kind of see the texture a little bit where those were wrinkled. And then using a butterfly punch, punched out a couple of butterflies and then ink those on the edges as well. And now I'm using some of the rhinestone strips that were included in the kit. I'm cutting the rhinestones apart and just using groups of 3 in the middle of the flowers. And then I'm also using a strip of 3 on the body of the butterflies. Okay, so you can kind of see the setup that we've got here. And then I did pull off one of the die cuts from the die cut sheet. I'm going to use that as part of my title. Now this is a Dusty Attic stencil that I ordered from Swirly Doos a while back. It's called Heart Attack. You can use any stencil that you have on hand. And then I'm using some paste here to add. I'm just wanting to use a little bit of texture on the background. Inking the edges here. Sometimes I like to ink the edges and also distress them for a little bit of texture. This time I didn't. That's an Ingvell Bohm ink. It's called Old Road. And I like to do this a lot, is cardstock and then my pattern paper on top of that. Roughing up the edges here. I'm kind of rolling up the edges, and that's so I can stick the photos underneath the edges here later on. You'll see what I'm going to do. Okay, so we're going to start building up the page here, tucking the doily under, and we're going to add that onto the page now. Okay, using some black smooch, and I just pull it out of the bottle. I don't spray it on. I like to pull it out and just use the spritzer to splatter onto the page. Okay, now so here I'm not really worried about the size of my pictures because I'm going to be tucking them up under the pattern paper, so that way I can align just the bottom of the pictures up. And now I'm putting the banners on, and I've got a circle picture that I'm going to use here at the top. And I popped that up with some of the cardboard box that the kit came in. Now you can see where I'm using that frame to frame part of the picture. And now I'm adding the die cut vines. And I folded up the leaves before I added them on. I didn't want them just flat on the page. And now I'm adding the flowers on and kind of layering them on there, tucking one flower underneath the other. And add in some smaller flowers underneath. Sometimes I'll cut flowers in half, the smaller ones, and tuck them underneath the bigger ones. They'll go further that way, and since you're not going to see all of the flower, why waste it? Okay, now we're starting to add the butterflies. Trying to figure out where to put those, and I like to add the butterflies on top of the flowers a lot of times. Okay, and now I'm using some of the letters to make the title. And it's hard to see the letters on here, so I decided to go ahead and use a marker to add some stitching to the letters. And I'm doing some journaling here, which is something we don't do a lot of anymore, so I'm trying to add that again. And I'm doing it in my own handwriting, which is something we don't like to do a lot of, but I think that's something when we look back later, our kids especially will like to see that. So I'm trying to do some of that. And I've cut apart some of these rhinestones. I'm just scattering those across the pages. And if you've listened to any of my other video tutorials, I like to do the bling in groups of 3, so making some kind of a triangle. So that's what I'm trying to do here, just groups of 3 on the page. And this is where I went back and did the stitching with the pen to try to make the letters stand out a little bit more so you could see those. So there's the title. And then I decided to tuck a tag from that sticker sheet in to the flower cluster as well. So there is the finished project. Just want to give you a couple of close-ups there. All right, so I hope you'll give it a try. Thanks for joining. Happy scrapping. Bye-bye.